Hello, welcome to Culture TV. In this video, I'll give you an overview of all the other pronouns that are most commonly used in Russian. So pretty much this is everything apart from the subject pronouns, because we know those very well already. Stay tuned. So this is lesson 52 of our online program, Let's Speak Russian. And as I say, in this video, we are going to focus on pronouns. We already know the subject pronouns very well. I hope we know them automatically even. We've seen how to decline them, and we know what the possessive pronouns look like as well. This time though, we are going to look at the other types of pronoun that exist. There are quite a few of them. We'll take them one by one, and we'll start off with relative pronouns. So let's refer to relative pronouns in English to understand what's going on. We use them to add any extra information about a noun or just something in general that we've already mentioned. To do that, we have to use a relative clause. So, for example, the boy who. Do you mean the one that, the situation which, the girl to whom, the place where? You get the idea. All of the underlined words here are the relative pronouns because they are the pronouns in the relative clause. They are the ones that are referring to what we've just mentioned in the previous clause or something we've previously mentioned in a previous paragraph or sentence or whatever. It's pretty much the same in Russian, although you have to treat them as adjectives. And that means, yes, you've guessed it, you're going to have to consider gender, number, and case whenever you want to use a relative pronoun. In this lesson, we're only going to have a look at gender and number because case will just be too much. So here's a little table. Gender and number, as usual, and then the relative pronoun. If the thing that you want to refer back to in a previous clause or sentence is masculine, you will use который. Который. If it's feminine, then it's которая. 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 Которая for neuter. And then которые. Которые for plural. Now, as you can tell, they all sound very similar due to reduction, but in written Russian, you have to get it right, of course. Now, in Russian, unlike in English, we do not distinguish between animate and inanimate nouns that are being referred back to by the relative pronoun. So as you remember, we said the boy who, but then the situation which or the situation that. It makes life much easier in Russian because we don't have that. It's all the same. So just a few example sentences. Книга, которая ей нравится. Книга, которая ей нравится. The book that she likes. Которая, feminine because книга, the noun that is being referred to, is feminine. Дети, которые шли в школу. Дети, которые шли в школу. The children that were going to school. Children, plural, дети, therefore the relative pronoun, которые, will also be plural. And we'll stop there for now. We might look at cases in the future, but these are the basics. So the next group of pronouns that I would like to talk about are the reflexive pronouns. So we've seen and we use regularly all the subject pronouns. However, there is one more. There is one extra pronoun in Russian, and it has a very particular meaning. Себя. Себя. And then it has its possessive form as well, which is свой. Свой. Why are they called reflexive? Well, we've seen reflexive verbs in lesson 42 already. We use them whenever the object of the sentence or a phrase is the same as the subject. In other words, you are performing an action on yourself, like washing yourself. And so therefore these pronouns convey the idea that the subject and object are either the same or somehow linked. And this very often helps to prevent confusion in the listener or the reader. It really clears many things up. And that is particularly applied to the possessive form, свой, but we'll have a look at that in just a moment. Let's first understand what this is. So first of all, let's have a look at себя. And we can translate this as oneself into English, but actually it replaces all of the self pronouns in English, so all of the reflexive pronouns. In other words, myself, yourself, himself, and so on. Can you see that we change the first part of the word depending on who the subject is? Well, in Russian, there's no need to do that. It's all one word, себя. For example, я себя спрашиваю. I ask myself. Ты себя спрашиваешь. You ask yourself. Она себя видит. She sees herself, maybe in the mirror or in a reflection in the water, something like that. Они себя не слышат. They don't hear themselves. So all the same word, no matter who the subject is, it's all one word, себя. Now the question really is, how does this differ from reflexive verbs? When do we use мыться to wash yourself, and when do we say я мою and then себя? The answer is that sometimes you can use them interchangeably and they'll have pretty much the same meaning. There'll be virtually no difference. In other cases, though, only one of the two forms, so either the reflexive verb or a normal verb with the reflexive pronoun exists, and you can't swap them over. One exists and one doesn't, okay? For example, я моюсь, this is using the reflexive verb. It pretty much means the same as я мою себя. I wash myself. These are pretty much the same thing. So yeah, we can put an equal sign there. However, if we take another reflexive verb, for example, to wake up, if we conjugate that, it will be я просыпаюсь. Я просыпаюсь. You cannot say я просыпаю себя. No, 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 that does not exist. I can't explain to you why, that's just not a thing. You have to remember that with просыпаюсь, it's just a verb that is always reflexive and it cannot take on any pronouns. Whilst, if you were to say я сказал себе, I said to myself, yes, and likewise you can say she said to herself, она сказала себе, мы сказали себе, они сказали себе, я говорю себе, ты говоришь себе, я спрашиваю себя. Yes, we've seen this already. But you cannot say я сказался. You cannot use the reflexive form here. So this is just a matter of remembering and knowing and just accumulating this list with time, which verbs are reflexive and which are not. Some textbooks go on talking about transitive and intransitive verbs. If you want an explanation relating to that, then you can write a comment below. I will either do a separate video or I'll answer you otherwise, but I think that's just too much detail. So I'm really just trying to introduce to you this pronoun of себя, which can be declined in cases, as you can see here, because when you're using сказать, to say, you use the dative case, saying something to someone, and therefore себя can be declined. However, there is good news. There is one key difference that does exist between reflexive verbs and normal verbs that take on this reflexive pronoun себя, and that is that reflexive verbs are used only in an accusative case scenario. In other words, when you have a direct object, when you are performing an action directly on yourself. If the action or verb involves a different case, dative, genitive, whatever it may be, remember I call this the control of the case, then you cannot use reflexive verbs and instead you have to use this pronoun. As we just saw with to say, you are saying something to someone. Someone is an indirect object. Therefore, you cannot use a reflexive verb because reflexive verbs only work with the accusative case, i.e. a direct object. So as I said, себя does get declined by case and by case only. However, the possessive version, свой, is affected by gender, number, and case, so all three. We'll come on to this in just a second. Let's first of all remind ourselves of our table of declension of all the pronouns. You should know this off by heart now. So now really we should add on an extra row. So let's do that. Here it is. There is no nominative case for this reflexive pronoun because it's reflexive, as we just said. You cannot be the subject of the sentence if you are talking about an action being performed on an object. It just makes sense for there not to be a nominative case. So therefore we have себя, себе, себя in the genitive, собой in the instrumental, and себе in the prepositional. Okay? Let's have a look at some example sentences just to make this clearer. Он думает только о себе. He thinks only about himself. Я купил себе подарок. I bought a present for myself. Yes? Ты это купил сестре? Нет, я это купил для себя. Ты это купил сестре? Нет, я это купил для себя. Did you buy this for your sister? No, I bought it for myself. Я, subject, did it for myself. The subject did it for themselves. Для себя. Okay? That is probably it in terms of себя. I don't want to make this any more harder for you, so let's have a look at свой now, which is the possessive form. Now this can have two translations. It either means one's own, so something that you own, it's your own thing, or it translates as any personal pronoun where the owner is the subject of the sentence. Quite confusing, let's have a look. So the first meaning, у него свои проблемы. He has his own problems. In other words, the problems belong to him. Okay? This is rarely used, so don't worry about that. The main usage, and when it's most commonly used, is the second scenario, when the owner is the subject of the sentence. I'll show you how that works in a moment. Let's just have a look at the agreements. So again, gender and number, and then the reflexive possessive pronoun. That's the correct name for it. Свой for masculine. And just like any other possessive pronoun, it will change depending on what it is describing. Своя, своё, свои. Свой, своя, своё, свои. Now, one interesting little point here, свой can actually be used as an adjective as well. And if it is, then it is actually the antonym of a different adjective in Russian, which is чужой. And чужой means foreign, strange, or alien. So if you refer to a person as чужой, then they're not yours, they're not your own. They've come from somewhere else, they're foreign, they don't belong here, in other words. Свой, however, is the opposite of that. It means someone who does belong here, who is with you. And obviously this depends on the speaker's perspective. You know, it could mean a family member is свой, but very often in Russian culture, when you say свой, it actually means a Russian person, or it could mean a member of your team, or a member of your group, or whatever it may be. So someone who belongs to you, okay? But that's just a little side note there. Let's have a look at some example sentences. Я расскажу тебе свои секреты. I will tell you my secrets. Who is the subject here? Well, it's I. I am the one who's going to be telling the secrets. Тебе, to you, and then the secrets, because they are mine, they are my own secrets, I'm going to use свои. Now, I want to show you when this can start leading to confusion and where свой really saves the day. Ему нравится его школа. He likes his school. So does he like the school to which he goes, his own school, or is this a different boy's or a different man's school? We don't know, do we, in English? In Russian, though, if you say ему нравится своя школа, that means he likes his own school. As we said, the owner of the school is the subject of the sentence. It's his school, and it is that school that he likes. So, for example, Jack likes his own school. But if Jack likes Peter's school, we won't use свой, we will use его. There we're making it clear that it's not the subject of the sentence, but somebody else's thing, yes? So it's really much easier. We don't have this in English at all, so we always have to guess. He likes his school. Who? It's she likes her school. Yeah, is it Mary liking her own school, or is it Mary liking Lucy's? We're not sure. In Russian, though, we have this with свой, своя, своё, свои. Я расскажу is the conjugation of рассказать, which is the perfective of рассказывать, which means to tell or to recite. Very commonly used in Russian. Doesn't have to be a story or a poem, just anything. To tell, most commonly. So that is it for these reflexive pronouns. I think I have gone into too much detail. So if this has gone over your head, if you've been a bit overwhelmed, don't worry about it too much. At least you now have seen this and you'll be able to at least recognize it when you hear or listen to or read Russian. And now for the remaining pronouns that exist in Russian. And I don't want to spend too much time on these because, well, we've already done a lot of talking about the previous ones, so let's just visit these ones briefly. So here are the determiner pronouns. If we take the word such in English, the best translation of that into Russian will be такой. Такой. If we want to convey the same meaning of the word such, but with adverbs, then we use так. Так. And так is pretty much the same as so in English. Let me show you what I mean. Мне не нравятся такие книги. I don't like books like that. Or in other words, I don't like such books. Okay? Такие. In this case, we're treating it as an adjective. Same idea here. Такая красивая улица. Such a beautiful street. The meaning of such in this case is different, but it's still the same word. So in Russian we can say that. We also use такая. We've seen this phrase in lesson 47. Я люблю читать таких писателей как. I love reading authors like, or such as is probably the better translation here. And here, of course, we just have a declension, but the word is still the same. Такой. And then if we want to look at adverbs, then a good example is не так быстро. Не так быстро. Быстро is an adverb. Yes, remember lesson 32. And then так is what we use with adverbs. So not so fast. If someone is speaking very quickly to you in Russian, you can say, if it's a relatively informal situation, you can say не так быстро, not so fast. I suppose you could say this on the street as well. But anyway, that's the difference. Let's just have a look at how we make these agree. Такой for masculine, такая feminine, такое neuter, такие plural. Okay? Так stays the same all the time because adverbs have no gender very evidently. So now let's have a look at demonstrative pronouns. Again, a long, sophisticated name for a very simple idea. We can regard them as adjectives, particularly in Russian, because demonstrative pronouns and demonstrative adjectives in Russian are the same, i.e. we use the same words for both of them. And what are they? Well, this is essentially this and that in English. Those are demonstrative pronouns. Now, although in English we say this one and that one, those are demonstrative pronouns, but this and that, they're demonstrative adjectives. So if you want to say this book, that is a demonstrative adjective, but this one, that's a pronoun, okay? But in Russian we have the same list of words for both of them. So let's have a look at this quick table here. Gender and number again, and then this and that. If we want to say this and it's a masculine noun, we will say этот. Этот. Это for feminine. Это. The same pronunciation for neuter. Это, because of the reduction, yes. Эти for plural. Эти. Okay? So this is whenever you have this, and you can use this either as an adjective or as a pronoun. And then for that, тот, та, то, те. Just a few examples. Эта книга лучше, чем та. This book is better than that one. So in this sentence, as you can see, we have both an adjective, эта книга, this book, and then is better than that one. That one, that is now a pronoun. But in Russian, they are the same word. Эта книга лучше, чем та, than that one. Now, of course, это and ta, they're different because of the distance. Whenever you want to say something is close to you, you will say this, but if it's far away, you will say that. But the idea is that we're using the same group of words. Этот двор очень большой. This courtyard is very large. This courtyard, an adjective. Это окно, this window. Это окно чище, чем то. This window is cleaner than that one. Okay, that's all that you need to know. Okay, and lastly for today, we're going to have a look at interrogative pronouns. In other words, these are the question words. We refer to them as the 5 W's plus the H in English. Now, in Russian, you have to be aware, and I think I've mentioned this before, is that the what and who question words are affected by case. And then the which, I don't think the which actually is part of the 5 W's, but anyway, it is a question word. Which in Russian is affected by all three, gender, number, and case. But we're not going to have a look at which just yet because it does get quite hard. Let's have a look at the what and who and why we need to decline them and what the declensions are. So in the nominative case, very simply, it's just что and кто, as we've seen. In the accusative case, что stays the same, but if it's who, we say кого, кого. The pronunciation is v because this is a rule that we've seen. Very often in Russian, the letter g, if it's in between two vowels, will often be pronounced as a v. But the point here is we are changing the way, we're declining essentially кто to кого. Why is that? If you remember back to the lesson on the accusative case, masculine and neuter nouns that are inanimate, so not alive, don't change. That's why we stay with что. If it's animate, however, we will say кого. Кого, that's why, okay? Because if the thing that we are seeing, for example, я вижу, or the thing that we love, or the thing that we know, whatever verb that requires the accusative case, if it is alive, we will say кого. In the dative case, чему, кому. Чего, кого. In the genitive, чем, кем. In the instrumental, and чём, ком. In the prepositional. Let's have a look at an example sentence. Кому ты купила эти конфеты? Я их купила сестре. Okay, an example with the dative case. Whom did you buy these sweets for? Okay, can you see that even in English we also say whom and not who? Because who is the subject. Whom is an object. So for whom did you buy these sweets? Okay, кому. That's why. If we were to just say кто, then it's unclear in Russian because кто, if you ask кто, that means you're asking for the subject or the person doing the action. But if you want to find out about the person receiving the action or the person to which the action is being carried out on, then you will say кому, кого, and so on. О чем вы думаете? О чем вы думаете? What are you thinking about? Or о ком вы думаете? Whom are you thinking about? С кем он идет? Whom is he going with? Кого ты знаешь? Кого ты знаешь? Whom do you know? Okay, hopefully that makes it a bit clearer. So that is it for pronouns. That is it for today's lesson. I do appreciate that this might have been a bit fast and quite a long lesson actually, but I do think it's important that you know about these pronouns and some of them you will have to use. So don't ignore them, don't neglect them, take your time to understand them well. As always, any questions, comments, put them down below, send us an email, all the social media details are also in the description. Thank you very much for your attention and for your hard work. See you next time. Goodbye.